Good evening. Welcome to our May 28th budget hearing and special meeting. Let me introduce myself as Bill Haddad. I'm the school board president. Lauren Crosby, our vice president. Mr. Tim Bazan, Mr. Wes Hood, Mrs. Debbie New, Mrs. Kathleen Niles are all in attendance, along with our superintendent of schools, Mr. Sean Becerra, our assistant superintendent, Mr. Chris Clancy, and our school district business official, Mr. Nick Panuccio. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you'd please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will now turn the meeting over for the budget hearing portion of our agenda.
Good evening. For those of you who saw our last meeting, board meeting last week when the board adopted the proposed 2020-21 budget, you're going to see a pretty familiar presentation. That's intentional. We wanted to make sure that we really highlighted the key factors in our budget development process for you. Certainly, this has been an unusual, probably the most unusual budget season I've ever been a part of. And we appreciate everyone's patience in the sense that we understand that we're creating a budget, presenting a budget on a very condensed timeline. We've talked at length about the fact that typically our budget would have already been actually voted on a number of days ago, and we're still a couple of weeks away from our actual budget vote. So please continue to ask us questions. You can email us, you can call us in response to the presentation that you see tonight. And I also want to reiterate the fact that Mr. Panuccio and I have been going through some of the questions that we've received from people. We're going to be posting in response to some of the questions we've had. We're going to be posting on our website some frequently asked questions about the budget process. We're going to add questions and answers to this document over the next couple of weeks, right up until the budget vote. So please don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. So again, I just like to set the tone for our budget development process by just reiterating a couple of key points. One being that the budget is definitely not simply an exercise in math and accounting. It's critically important that the budget directly reflects the priorities of the school district, looking to next year and also matching our long-term priorities and plans for the district. So how we spend our money gives us a strong indication of what our priorities are. And it's important to see, do our statements match where we put our dollars? And so we'll continue to come back to that point, that our budget is anchored in the priorities of the district. And I would maintain that the district has an obligation, two primary obligations in our role as public school district leaders. One is that we need to support the established priorities of the district, and we need to support the implementation of a strong instructional program that meets state education department requirements. And the second responsibility is that we act as responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars for the Canastota school district community. So just a couple of items I want to highlight under those two areas. First, in the area of supporting priorities in state education department requirements, we need to understand that the needs of the district evolve over time. we need to make sure that we have a process in which we evaluate the changing needs of the district. One of the prime examples that we're going through now is, education is looking different. We're living it right now through our remote learning program. It's a perfect example of the fact that we need to be adaptable, we need to adjust, and we need to have a process that allows us to make adjustments quickly and efficiently. The budget should reflect not only our priorities of where we've been, but it should be a strong reflection of where we need to go tomorrow. What do we see for Canastota when we look down the road? What do we expect of the district? Because our goal is to be an exceptional school district in every way. We don't want to be average. We don't want to blend into the crowd. We want to truly stand apart and be an exceptional school district. The district has had that reputation, and we want to live up to that standard that previous generations of members of our community have established. In terms of responsible use of taxpayer dollars, there's been a strong focus on operational efficiency. Are there ways in which we can become more efficient? There'll be several examples of this as we go through the presentation. Are we maximizing available district funds? For example, by whenever possible, leveraging opportunities to access state aid through the BOCES cooperative process. Are we aggressively seeking out grant funding and opportunities? I can tell you that's going to be a huge priority as we move forward. Any opportunity that we have to supplement funding taxpayer dollars that we can supplement through accessing grant funding, that is a priority. We're going to be talking in the presentation tonight about how we're allocating our funds that we've received as a target school district as well. And finally, we need to continue to evaluate positions. Anytime there's any type of movement in our staffing, I can assure you that we are looking at whether or not that position needs to continue in its current form, whether that position is needed for the operation of the school district. One thing that will not happen is an automatic replacement of a position. There has to be a need for that position to be replaced and perpetuated. So the themes that we're going to talk about are the need to be creating long-term and sustainable practice in the district. So some of the major district initiatives, and they're now displayed, being displayed on the screen. We have to address the reality of the fact that we are a designated CSI target school district. So we need to build the capacity to effectively address the requirements associated with that. Now, a lot of these other goals that you see on that list support this process, and quite frankly, we should be doing those things no matter what, whether we're a target school or not. We should have a strong data analysis and goal setting process. We shouldn't be talking in generalities. We should be pinpointed and structured in our approach to tackling district priorities. That's been a strong focus this past year, and it will be an even bigger emphasis on that moving forward. Our K-12 curriculum alignment is a priority. In talking to staff members throughout the course of the year, there is a recognized need to have greater vertical coordination and alignment with the district that matches my assessment of where we are as a district as well. And so our staffing decisions and our priorities will be a reflection of that coordination from kindergarten through 12th grade. We also recognize that the need to have that connection, that the school should be at the heart of the Canastota community. We have a responsibility and obligation to continue to create connections, real world connections for our students. That's not just something that's nice to do. That's actually imperative that we create those connections, because there's a lot that we can learn. There's a lot that our students and the adults in the school can learn from connecting with their outside world. And most importantly, it brings us education in a very relevant form. When we're connecting to the local community, when we're connecting to the local economy, then that is true, relevant education that will serve us well for the future. Several of the next items on that list, we went through an extensive analysis of our special education program this year. Along with that, we are partway through an analysis of our RTI and academic intervention services process. Those are linked in that they represent an analysis, a focus on how do we best provide services for students wherever they are. We are prepared at this point to offer a budget proposal that reflects some of the needs that have been uncovered through that process. And I'll give it another example of it. We spoke about the fact that there is a need, not just in Canastota, but in schools across the country to address various mental health needs. There are more and more students that we're seeing that can benefit from various intervention services, mental health services. In order to do the job that we feel like we would like to do, need to do for our students, this budget reflects a return of a school psychologist position. And so again, we believe that while this is a difficult budget year, we were able to find efficiencies in other areas of our operation, in some cases by not replacing some positions, because we felt that there is a definite need in another area. So this is an example of our actions matching our words, that we did believe that the addition of the school psychologist position was essential to our progress moving forward. We also know that remote learning is a real possibility. We've learned through our experiences over the past 3 months. We understand that we're not perfect in our implementation of remote learning, but we do feel that we've made some significant progress. And whether remote learning continues in some form, or hopefully sooner than later, we can return to a more normal face-to-face school environment. Either way, we'll be positioned, we'll learn from what we've gone through, and we'll be positioned to certainly supplement our face-to-face educational programs with some continued remote learning opportunities for students. And finally, the last item really links to my earlier reference to community connections. We are going to put a strong emphasis on the continued rollout of a badging and micro-credentialing system that directly connects to local and regional businesses, so that our students can engage in what relevant learning, things that they're interested in, and things that are needed in our local community for us to remain a strong and viable community moving forward. So those are some of the major initiatives that we're going to be talking about. Nothing on that list is very fancy. One of our biggest priorities is to not get caught up in an environment that is often associated with education, which is we chase after the latest and greatest buzzword. Our budget does not reflect any chasing after the latest program, the catchy phrase, or buzzword. This represents building a strong foundation, a sustainable foundation for us to be a strong district moving into next year and beyond. So nothing fancy, very foundational and very important to our overall success. And I will have Nick take us through the budget development process. Can you pick it up?
Yep, thank you, Sean. First, I'm going to talk about some of the factors impacting the 2020-21 budget development. First thing is our foundation aid number. In January, the first runs that came out were foundation aid were a lot higher than they seem to be now because they froze the foundation aid for the exact same amount that we had last year. So that was an approximate decrease of $170,000. Wanted to talk about the budget timelines that were altered and condensed. What we usually have 4 months to do, we have only 4 weeks to do based on the governor's executive order passed down in May. Talk about a couple look back periods. We had the first one recently, and that was on April 30th. So May 15th, the governor came out and said that as of right now, the federal, they're working on a stimulus package funding for schools, and that he can take an additional 20% because the state isn't getting the revenue that they've normally been forecasting and getting the last few years. So that amount that they can take back is another $2.1 million. As you can see, June 30th and December 31st are the next look back periods, and we'll be paying close attention to those to see if there's any take back. Last thing I want to talk about is the status of the educational system. We have no idea what it's going to look like come the fall, but we will be aware that there could be a lot of underfunded mandates that we're obliged by to do. So next I want to talk about the budget components. What are those? They're broken down into 3 parts. The first one is your program. It's where your teachers are, your special education teachers, assistants, athletics, everything that has to involve with the kids and the students, transportation, the BOCES, guidance. The next is the capital portion. That's part of maintaining our buildings and take care of our buildings. Our debt service from capital projects that we went out, so we have to pay our debt back similar to a car loan or a mortgage. And the last would be our capital outlay projects, which we do every year. There are $100,000 projects that the state allows us to do without getting it approved. The last portion is administrative component. This consists of Board of Education administrators, auditing, legal, BOCES, professional development personnel, business office, data, and taxing. So these are the 3 components of the budget, and I'll explain those in the next few slides. This is what we're proposing. Last year to this year, a 1.18 total increase of the budget from last year to this year. Those are the different components and the increases or decreases in each. This slide right here, I'm going to talk about the program side. It's 75.6% of the budget and is increasing by $445,066. The largest increases are contractual salaries and benefits. As you can see towards the bottom where it says transfers, capital outlay, you see that's $100,000 less. That's because I allocated that into the capital components of the budget. So the asterisk will tell you that due to some different accounting methods that I use, those are some differences in the numbers compared to last year and the reasons why. The next piece we'll talk about is the capital budget. As you can see, it's 14.1%, but it decreased by $437,000. That's because we retired some old debt. Same thing like if we paid off a car or paid off a mortgage, we paid off some old debt from capital projects. Next would be the administrative component. That's 10.3% of the budget and is increasing by $361,052. Same, that is because of contractual salaries and benefits. I do want to point out one thing due to the different accounting method that I use. Employee benefits, it went up $300,000, approximately $250,000. That's because of a different allocation method that I use in order to come up with the benefits. So this is the proposed 3-part budget. As you can see, the program takes up 3/4 of the budget, and the other quarter of the budget is capital and administrative costs. The next piece we'll talk about is revenues. Our budget was adopted on May 21st, 2020, and this is what the revenues will look like for next year. I want to point out that appropriated fund balance, we're using $300,000 less this year than we are last year, which is good for the district. Similar to the expenditures, I would like to show the revenue portion, and as you can see, 51% is state aid. 40% of our revenues come from property taxes, and the other 9% comes from the other revenues. The other revenues, so you can see fund balance, reserves, and other income. I want to note that we're using approximately $2.4 million in fund balance and reserves. This is to offset any increase to the taxpayers, additional increases, and making additional reductions to the budget. That's why we use that fund balance and reserves. So I'm going to talk about some key components of the 2021 budget. The first is the increase in the budget that we talked about a few slides ago is 1.18% from the prior year. So that's $177 higher than last year. Budget stays within the established tax cap. The tax cap will be taxing out at 2.65%, and the levy increase would be $327,430. We provide and maintain adequate district reserve levels for the district. And for the next few pieces, I'm going to have Sean discuss about the overall staffing and efficiency of operation.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier that every position would be evaluated when there was a retirement or somebody moving on to another position. So these are some examples where we've been able to find some efficiencies moving forward while not hurting our operation. I can assure people that these positions were not, these reductions were not taken lightly. There were multiple conversations about all of those areas. But to give you some examples, there is a partial replacement of a social studies vacancy that will be coming up at the end of the year. We feel like we can fully function, do what we need to do on the instructional side without harming our students or our programs. Again, through attrition, through a retirement, we're able to not replace a buildings and grounds position. And also in the district office operation, a support position is not being replaced under this scenario. That combined with our fourth bullet item, central office administrative realignment. Over the last several board meetings, we've gone through a process to establish some new positions, to abolish some old positions. The net result is that there is an overall savings in our administrative budget while we feel we've become more streamlined and have improved our effectiveness in being able to operate the district. So those are examples that touch different parts of the operation, from our buildings and grounds to our instructional side to our administrative side. Every area has been and is going to continue to be looked at. And these are just some of the examples of where we've been able to find efficiencies, and which has allowed us to present a budget that stays, again, as Nick stated, within our cap, and without having to eliminate positions or programs, or people or programs, I should say. Next slide is the continuing talking about efficiency of our operation. And I think Nick can speak a little bit more to this process, but when we talk about supplies and materials, typically those aren't huge, big ticket items, but yet they're still a part of the budget, and there's still things that we're looking at. And I don't know if Nick, you wanted to comment on that process that's been happening in the district.
Yeah, so we're taking a look at everything. Obviously, we know that we haven't been in school the past few months, and we're not sure what it's going to look like next year when we start in the fall. So we're going to be monitoring the supplies and materials budget very closely. We're going to have to utilize that in case we need it for, technological advances that we need because kids are working remotely, and what that's going to look like. So that's going to be under a microscope there. The second part, evaluation of professional services. I did an RFP process, which is called, it's request for proposal, where I go out and request proposals for services, and I was able to save us $20,000 on our liability insurances. So in the next part, reduction in external professional development, we're looking to do things in-house and things that make sense. So we are going to look to BOCES for some professional development because, as you know, when you go through BOCES, you're able to get some level of aid on that. So we want to, do the best we can with the district's money. Utilization of grant funding to support instructional priorities. I know Sean talked about it in a couple previous slides and in the beginning. We're going to utilize what we can to put in our grants in order to save positions and to do whatever makes sense going forward with the federal funds. And the last thing would be emphasis on shared services through BOCES. Anytime we get a chance to partner up with another district in our local BOCES, we will do that. And we will also look through partnering up with any districts throughout the state because we can do cross contracts with other BOCES and other school districts as well. Talked about this a couple slides ago, the efficiency of our appropriated fund balance. The district will appropriate $300,000 less this year than in the prior year. This is one of my favorite slides, tax cap formula. I never go into great detail with this because it's, as you can see, it's a convoluted formula. But I've had some discussions recently. I had some questions be asked to me. So I want to point out one thing. In the second line where it says allowable levy growth factor, a lot of people have been asking, well, you're going out at 2.65, but the law says 2%. In the formula, this is the 2% factor right here. It's the allowable levy growth factor. That's where the state will give you that number, and it cannot go over 2%. This year it was 1.81. That was a part of that formula. So sometimes when people say, oh, you're going over 2%, we're not. We're taxing at the level that we're able to tax out at, and the 2% is part of the formula that gets us to that point. I know this is hard to understand. If anyone doesn't understand this, they can give me a call at the office anytime. I'll get out my information towards the end. This would be the 2021 proposed tax levy increase, as a couple slides ago, the 2.65%. When we put it in dollars perspective, we put it to two different ways. So 70 cents of every $100,000 of assessed value, that's how much the increase to be. Or let's say if you had a $100,000 home, it would be increased by $70 per year. I also wanted to note that the STAR exemption is frozen, $726 from last year this year. Governor Cuomo has trying to get away from increasing the STAR by any means, and he's looking to get out of it completely in the future. But right now it's frozen at $726 for our district. Contingency budget. What is a contingency budget? Should the budget fail on June 9th, the Board of Education may adopt a contingency budget based on last year's tax levy. So that means that we would have to look at making additional reductions of $327,430. We have done everything that we could do within this proposed budget to avoid cutting positions, which is not the same as attrition. However, if the vote is defeated, this will not be the case. There is no guidance for a defeated vote on June 9th, which means we will not have time for a second vote, and we will have to go right into a contingency budget. There's a couple other propositions that will be on the ballot. I want to discuss them. Proposition 2, which we have every year, we roll over our buses, our oldest buses, and we purchase new ones. So we're doing 43 passenger seat passenger buses for the sum of approximately $388,000. Proposition 3 is a new 10-year capital reserve fund not to exceed $5 million in order to offset future renovations, additions, acquisition of machinery and equipment. I was asked also in recent days about this and what it meant. We do have a capital reserve fund right now of $3.7 million. We had a capital project vote back in December, which $3.2 million will be allocated to our future capital project, leaving us with $500,000 in that reserve. So by law, you can't just add to that reserve. What I have to do is by voter approval, have a new capital reserves fund sent up. So in the event that there's some surplus money at the end of the year, we can put it in this reserve for future capital projects, which will help offset the taxpayers' portion and local share. Board of Education, there's two candidates with two positions available, Bill Haddad and Wes Hood. And this will be the last page. of our presentation. As you can see, the budget vote is Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. Absentee ballot only. You have to be mailed in and received by 5 p.m. If the votes are not received, the ballots are not received by 5 p.m., they will not be counted. The budget adoption, which we already did, that's just some information. On our website at Canastota CSD.org, we have our presentations. If you missed any of them, you can go on and find out a lot of information about our budget. All the deliverables and documentation that we need to put out according to law are right on there. And to the right of that will be the propositions that we talked about during the course of this presentation. If you have any questions, you can call me. You can get my information right on the school website, or call the district business office and ask to speak with me. I'd like to thank you very much for listening tonight. We appreciate it. And I'll pass it over to Sean for any closing comments.
Yeah, again, we just like to thank everybody for joining us. We'd like to, again, thank you for your patience during what's been undoubtedly a very unusual budget process. And because of that, we're going to be releasing a in writing question and answer of most frequently asked questions document tomorrow. And we're also going to be releasing a new video that goes through some of those questions as well. So if you're interested, you can get more of that information as a follow-up to this session. You'll be able to access those things tomorrow, and we'll continue to update them in the next couple of weeks as new questions come in. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean and Nick. Is there any questions from the board? Now, board, I just want to let you know that I did have Chris mute all your microphones to reduce on some of the background noises. So if you have any questions, you will need to unmute. Or you can wave at me and I'll wait for you. If you're... Debbie, you were there. Debbie, you were there for a second, but you went back on mute. Not yet. There you go. Stop.
Okay. No, I just want to remind people again that these ballots must be mailed. They cannot be dropped off. They must be mailed, and they must be in the district office on June 9th. So, you know, I just want to underline, highlight, or whatever that.
Yep, by 5 p.m.
Yep.
Any other board members? Anything? Okay, I'm going to close the budget hearing. All right, part of the special meeting here, we've got a couple pieces of business to take care of. We have some new business. Got this up here. All right, number one. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve the resolution for the change in dates for the 2019-2020 district calendar. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Tim, I need you to unmute, Tim. Mr. Bazan. Are you in favor, Mr. Bazan?
I also seconded, I thought, but it's
all right. Anybody opposed? Carried. Number two, resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve the intermunicipal agreement between Canastota CSD and the Madison Oneida BOCES, July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. May I have a motion?
So moved.
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Personnel recommendations. All appointments are pending clearance on fingerprinting. Resignations and retirements. Resolved that upon the recommendation of superintendent of schools, the board does hereby accept Deborah Bennett's letter of retirement as a teacher aide effective June 30th, 2020. May I have a motion?
So moved with regret.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Permanent appointments. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby appoint Karen Henner as Director of Instructional Support Services at $82,000 effective July 1st, 2020, with a 4-year probationary period in the tenure area as a school district leader. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Substitute appointments. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby appoint Kathy Palladino as a part-time director of special education and pupil personnel services at a daily rate of $500 a day effective July 1st, 2020. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby appoint Deborah Bennett as a substitute teacher's aide at $13.51 per hour, effective July 1st, 2020. May I have a motion?
So move.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right. Future dates. All right. As we've been talking, June 9th, budget and trustee vote. June 9th, the regular Board of Education meeting will start at 7:30. All right. I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel contract issues.
So moved.
So move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. You guys in your emails have an executive session meeting connection. So I will see you there. We are now in executive session. Thank you. Hi, Chris. I didn't hear him.
I think he's okay whenever you're ready.
Are we ready to go, Chris? I'm assuming that's yes. All right. We came back out of executive session. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Have a great night. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Okay. Hey, Sean, can I pause you for 1 second?
What's
I
that?
I have one thing to ask you later. Just you.
Not here.
Okay.
Call him.
Yeah, do you want me to?